the outcome, you take a stance. What if you're an affiliative, harmonious type leader and you're really not comfortable with taking a stance, but sometimes you have to take a stance as a leader? Tell me about that. What does that mean? Why is that important? Or is it?
Doesn't it provide foresight?
It's identifying your values, what you value, and if something goes past that, then you have to put your foot down. And if you didn't, then you would be wafty.
Wafty?
Wafty.
Wafty, okay. Identifying your values, that's what you put down, right? Very good.
It's like twirling.
Exactly. Exactly.
I think stance leads to focus.
Stance
You know,
leads to
your
focus.
team doesn't know what's the stance, they have no focus.
Nice. By the way, we mentioned we wanted interaction before. I didn't tell you the reason, but I think this is an obvious point. I'm a consultant. I know what I'm going to say. I don't know what you're going to say. I need to take brilliant things like that, repackage it, and sell it to other people. That's what wonderful. That's terrific. Why else? Yes. And there's nothing. I do have a quote, actually, at least from Colin Powell at the end of this, but I don't want to do that yet. I want to hear more about taking a stance. When, why, anything you want to say about it.
Is it taking a stance in that preparation? You know, learning beforehand as a leader what needs to be done and then relaying that to the crew or a team or whatever.
Sure, part of preparation, figure out what has to be done, and then relaying it, taking a stance at that moment. I don't want to put words in anybody's mouth, although my wife says I do it all the time. Anybody else on stance?
Maybe not flip-flopping, like keeping your foot in the right position. Your left foot always stays in the same spot. You're not going to flip-flop and change your stance on it.
Very nice. Like an anchor on a ship, or with Ron's analogy, that left foot, that's anchored. And other things may, that's the core. That's the value. That's the first principle. Whatever it is, that is not violable. And when someone starts to mess with you on that, no, that's not in my ethical range. Sorry, isn't going to cut it in my association. Fair? Great analogy. Anybody else on stance? And we'll... Yes, sir.
The flip side of that, your left foot's your anchor,
Yeah.
and your right foot if you're lefty. But the other side of that for leadership is that your other foot remains flexible according to the situation that you have at hand. So again, we go situational, and you use that flexibility to judge where you need to go based on the target.
Boy, that's terrific. The idea of stance and flexibility, both of them involve, joint flexibility. That's my only motion I'll do for the entire thing. But let's take that a step. Let's flip it back again. If you have, not you, but if one has a stance, and the stance is my way or the highway, dogmatic, dogma, all those other words, this is my stance, like it or leave it, there is zero flexibility. You get rigidity, ossification, and all other SAT words that none of us remember what they mean, right? But without that right foot, without that flexibility, without give and take a little bit, listening in the democratic leader mode, maybe, possibly, it never happens, but maybe your employee has a better idea than you do. It's rare, but it's conceivable this could happen once in your career as a leader. So you
It
might
might be your board as well. You know, sometimes when you read your board packet, you go into a meeting with a predisposed stance.
Right.
But then once the discussion happens around that board table, you can your stance can actually be flexible.
Sure, and that's fine. You have new data if you listen. If you don't listen, you don't. Let me give you my wife is a consultant, and when I met her, and she found out I was a consultant, you can imagine a marriage where we just consult each other all the time. It's quite exciting. But she was carrying around in her briefcase this sort of dog-eared list of things, and it was from a speech that Colin Powell gave in around 1998 or so in Chicago, and it was his 19 facets of leadership, what he believed, and I've never read anything like it, and I got a copy of it. There's now a book out, not too recent, The Leadership Secrets of Colin Powell. It was, I think, not authorized by him, but it's the same 19 things. So I've got a couple quotes from that relate to golf, stance, and so forth. In terms of stance, this one isn't maybe one of the prettiest quotes you've ever heard, but it is real. Quote, being responsible sometimes means pissing people off. What does he mean by that? I want to relate it to stance and so forth. He could have said 5 million things. He's that great leader, right? But of the 19, this was the first or second one. Being responsible sometimes means pissing people off. Doesn't sound like an affiliative leader to me. What does he mean and why is it important? Have you heard of Colin Powell? Does anyone know the word "the"? I mean,
Sometimes someone has to make the hard decision, and you don't please everybody.
Right.
Whether it's
right.
your board, your team, you know, you're for sometimes you gotta do something people don't agree with.
And if you never make the tough decision and please everybody and want, you're democratic, affiliate leader all the time, the sense of urgency is gone, and life goes on, change, as we heard from Guy Kawasaki yesterday. You can't do that forever. You've got to take a stance, whether it's an ethical stance or just the right decision, and everyone ain't going to be happy all the time.
I was going to say that the higher you get up in the organization, the more you feel that. When you become responsible for a department, part of what you are is responsible for the policies of that department. And then if you move up a little bit further and you become responsible for a division, you're responsible for that division's policies. Right now I'm responsible for the technology structures and policies in our organization. So it's like stupid, the kind of stuff you run into. Just one quick story, Tom. We have a policy at our organization of not using inappropriate websites. Okay. And so I have a piece of software that kind of stops that from happening. So one day I set our website policy thing to say nobody can go to Victoria's Secret. Well, we got an email in the help desk from somebody on our staff who says, well, wait a minute, I was right in the middle of my order when that happened. Can you turn it back on for me? Right. So, your policies that you set for the betterment of the good sometimes will rankle individuals. Even to stupid stuff like that.
When the employee said, "Can you turn it back on for me?" Never mind. I wasn't sure if you meant the site or the employee.
This is what I asked her. What I asked her was, "Are you sure you want to ask me that question?"
Exactly. Yeah.
And then she,
So let me do one more of these and then back to you or whatever. I don't know.
Are you doing